Immigration debate, why some members of Congress are concerned about recent raids. Second Amendment rights, how President Obama defends his push for gun control. War on terror, why the White House is asking computer companies to help. And surprise discovery, a ship unearthed at a Virginia construction site, what it could tell us about the past. Plus, the Pope's message about love on EWTN News Nightly for Friday, January 8th, 2016. Good evening, and thank you for joining us. I'm Lauren Ashburn. We begin with a developing story. Federal investigators make 2 terror arrests of Iraqi refugees. They say one traveled to Syria to fight in the civil war. The other provided support to ISIS. One of the men was arrested in Sacramento, California. The other picked up in Houston. Their arrests bolster the argument of those who don't want refugees from war-torn places like Iraq and Syria coming to the U.S.
What I think is absolutely the right course of action and prudent to pause, stop, figure out what we're doing now, figure out the holes of it in the program, and then come to solutions.
Investigators say both of the terror suspects are Palestinians who were born in Iraq. They arrested 3 of the suspects' family members in Milwaukee on separate charges. We are getting our first look at new surveillance video as the suspect in the shooting of a Philadelphia police officer approaches the officer. The suspect tells investigators he did so in the name of Islam and pledged allegiance to the Islamic State.
Shot fired! Get those scream! I'm shot! I'm bleeding heavily!
Police say the suspect fired a total of 13 shots, 3 hitting the officer in the arm. The officer underwent surgery and is listed in stable condition. The White House is looking for help from major technology companies in fighting terrorism. Today, a delegation of senior officials, including Chief of Staff Dennis McDonough, traveled to San Jose, California, to meet with tech executives from companies like Facebook, Twitter, Apple, and Microsoft. The White House wants Silicon Valley to help counter ISIS online. Jason Calvi asked members of Congress why this is important.
Chairman, what are your thoughts on the White House meeting with tech companies to go after online terrorism? Is there privacy concerns? Is this a waste of time in your eyes?
No, I think that this is a very one of the most important issues in counterterrorism today is the dark space. Currently, the terrorists can communicate in darkness, and we can't see their communications even if we have a court order.
Some close to the talks say the government is also looking for a way to view encrypted messages. Meanwhile, Wyatt Goolsby just sat down with Tom Ridge. He's the former Republican Pennsylvania governor and the first Homeland Security Secretary. He's calling for bipartisan support of this initiative.
Secretary Ridge, thank you so much for talking with us today. I want to start off by getting your impressions of the Obama administration reaching out to companies like Facebook and Twitter in Silicon Valley, trying to get their help with combating terrorism. Is that a good idea? Could that help to sort of counter the ISIS recruitment that's going on right now online?
Well, I think it's a very positive move, not just for the Obama administration to reach out to the Silicon Valley and those companies, but for those companies to accept the opportunity to collaborate with the government to deal with a permanent global scourge, and that is of terrorism. We have to figure out a way to work together to reduce their effective malignant use of the networks that they own and operate.
Well, a lot of Americans are worried about personal privacy. It wasn't too long ago that we were talking about wiretapping, the NSA, cell phones, that kind of thing. Do you worry that if Apple and Facebook and Twitter start working more closely with the federal government, that it could eventually down the line lead to infringement on people's personal privacy and data?
Well, I think we need to talk about privacy in different terms. First of all, you and I live in the digital forevermore. We're going to be dealing with this issue in only a vigilant population, and people and political figures can make sure that there's a line between privacy and security. I'm not saying you surrender any privacy for security. Having said that, the reality is that there are no rules, there's no real collaboration. These two different groups, both of whom have a national interest in providing for the common defense. And they really absolutely must do. It's going to take some time. I'm glad they're talking, and hopefully the conversation will lead to some rules of the road around which or about which they both agree and help provide for the common defense of this country.
Well, Secretary Ridge, thank you so much for talking with us today about these issues.
My pleasure.
And thank you, Wyatt. Other stories our EWTN News Nightly team is covering. As promised, President Obama just vetoed a bill that would have defunded Planned Parenthood and erased part of the Affordable Care Act. Republican lawmakers approved more than 60 measures to change or repeal Obamacare, but this is the first one to reach the president's desk. EWTN has learned that House Speaker Paul Ryan and more than 130 other lawmakers are sending a brief to the Supreme Court in support of the Little Sisters of the Poor. It is just one of the groups trying to fight a provision in the Affordable Care Act, which says employers must provide insurance that includes contraception. In the White House briefing room today, I asked Press Secretary Josh Earnest about the Little Sisters case.
Well, we'll obviously have our own strong case to present to the Supreme Court about the steps that we have taken to ensure that we are balancing the religious liberties of Americans with the rights of other Americans to make their own decisions about their health care.
The administration says federal judges' past rulings support its case. EWTN is also involved in litigation over the Obamacare mandate in lower courts. Democratic lawmakers slam the president for raids on illegal immigrants. Jason Calvi is live at the Capitol tonight.
Lauren, yeah, it's an unusual flip where you see Democrats criticizing the president. They say the raids have to stop. Worried Democrats met with senior Obama administration officials last night. The Christmas Eve raids rounded up 121 Central Americans.
It really hurts on many, many levels. So shame on them for doing that.
Representative Tony Cardenas is one of the Democrats criticizing the Obama administration today.
Christmas Eve, Congress isn't in session, out they go. We want a lot of information.
You say you don't know where you'll have capacity to hold them when they arrive. Ask us, and we will tell you and show you the churches and the homes and the centers in our community that will very lovingly and very generously receive them.
These Democrats referred to the people raided as refugees fleeing violent countries. But Department of Homeland Security Secretary Jay Johnson says the ICE agents only targeted immigrants who had gone through all their legal options.
Secretary Johnson has a lot to answer for. His actions speak louder than his words. We have too much evidence to show that these people have not been getting proper due process.
But the White House says they did follow all the steps of the law. They say they're going to continue to stick with their policy of targeting for deportation criminals and recent arrivals illegally into the country. And I should add that the Republican frontrunner, Donald Trump, is taking credit for these raids. Lauren?
Why isn't that surprising? Since Jay Johnson has said that those arrested have exhausted all their legal options and it's time for them to go, why are Democrats opposed to this?
Well, it sounds like some Democrats at least tell me that they're not opposed to deportations in and of themselves, but what they're worried about, one Democrat says, is they want to make sure the process is fair, that these people do receive legal representation. And he tells me if a judge does find, following those guidelines he suggested, if the judge does find that these people are illegally in the country, then sure, they can be deported.
Are there other theories for these arrests, Jason?
Well, Lauren, the Democrats say that the Obama administration is trying to send a signal to Latin America, don't come to our country. This comes as recent illegal entrances into the country are on the uptick.
Jason Calvi reporting for us from the Capitol. Thank you very much. President Obama defends his new gun control measures. He took questions last night from supporters and opponents at a CNN town hall. President Obama came face-to-face with Americans passionate about gun control, answering tough questions from both sides and trying again to dispel what he called a conspiracy.
We put out a proposal that is common sense, modest, does not claim to solve every problem, is respectful of the Second Amendment, and the way it is described is that we're trying to take away everybody's guns.
He heard from Tara Kyle, the wife of murdered American sniper Chris Kyle.
The thing is that The laws that we create don't stop these horrific things from happening.
Gabby Giffords, the congresswoman shot 5 years ago, and her husband, astronaut Mark Kelly.
As you know, Gabby and I are both gun owners. We take gun ownership very seriously.
Conspicuously missing from the crowd at George Mason University in Virginia, the NRA leadership, which called it a PR stunt.
I'm happy to meet with them. I'm happy to talk to them. But the conversation has to be based on facts and truth and what we're actually proposing.
The president's executive actions would expand background checks and narrow the so-called gun show loophole, which exempts many small and private sellers from keeping records. An Arizona sheriff wanted to know how that would keep guns from the hands of criminals or the mentally ill.
Crime is always going to be with us. So I think it's really important for us not to suggest that if we can't solve every crime, we shouldn't try to solve any crimes.
And joining us right now is John Malcolm. He is the director of the Legal Center at the Heritage Foundation. Gayle Trotter is a political analyst. She has testified on Capitol Hill about gun control and its effects on women. Let's start with you, John. Has the president overstepped the Second Amendment with these executive actions?
Well, he certainly has sent a signal that he, may be trying to chill the market for the sale of guns. I don't think he has crossed the line yet. However, he said in process, several things that could end up crossing the line. He has asked the Department of Health and Human Services to engage in a rulemaking, the Social Security Administration to engage in a rulemaking that could end up depriving many seniors or people who are being treated for mental illnesses but have not been judged by a court of law to be mentally ill, could end up depriving them of their Second Amendment rights. And if they enforce gun laws against hobbyists and personal collectors, that would also run afoul of existing laws and could violate the Second Amendment.
Well, last night, Gayle, the president took questions from both sides of the gun debate. Let's take a listen to this question and answer between a woman who was raped and the president.
Why can't your administration see that these restrictions that you're putting to make it harder for me to own a gun or harder for me to take that where I need to be is actually just making my kids and I less safe?
I just want to repeat that there's nothing that we've proposed that would make it harder for you to purchase a firearm.
Gayle, your reaction.
Kimberly made such a good point to President Obama that gun control disproportionately affects women. Over 90% of violent crime in the United States occurs without a firearm. So in those situations, if a woman has a gun, she's able to have a fighting chance. She can reverse the balance of power against her assailant and have a chance to fight back. It also dramatically increases the risk to all criminals if they know that law-abiding citizens can resist their attacks with firearms. Any of these things that President Obama is pushing this week, none of them would have stopped the recent mass shootings. So it makes you think that the effort here is to really chill law-abiding citizens being able to have firearms.
Sounds like the two of you agree that it is both chilling what the president is doing. Thank you very much for joining us. That is Gayle Trotter and John Malcolm. Mexico's president says fugitive drug lord El Chapo has been recaptured. The arrest comes 6 months after his prison break that was caught on camera. The Mexican Navy says Joaquin El Chapo Guzman was apprehended after a shootout with Mexican Marines. Mexico's president made today's announcement on Twitter, writing, quote, "Mission accomplished. We have him." El Chapo is often called the most powerful drug trafficker in the world. Scientific tests question North Korea's claim that it detonated a hydrogen bomb this week. Still, people in North Korea are celebrating news of the nuclear test. Tens of thousands of North Korean soldiers and civilians danced in public. The North Korean government reportedly orchestrated the celebration. Another tough day for investors and people who are close to retirement age. Stocks just dropped again. The Dow Jones Industrial Average started going up this morning, but by the end of the day, it fell 168 points. The Nasdaq and S&P were also down. This has been the worst week for U.S. stocks since 2001. Coming up, in this Jubilee Year of Mercy, how the Pope is spreading a message of love. And returning to the surface, see the ship that was buried in time until now. Thank you for joining us this evening. I'm Lauren Ashburn. Next month, Pope Francis heads to Mexico. 2.3 million people are expected to attend the papal visit on the outskirts of Mexico City. About 300,000 people are expected to turn out for the Mass alone. Ed Pentin, Rome correspondent for the National Catholic Register, joins us now. Ed, the Pope gave quite a moving homily this morning about love. What was the main takeaway?
Yes, Lauren, he talked about really the differences in love and the differences between an authentic love and a love which we often hear on television and in places. And he tried to sort of differentiate between the two and spoke about really how much God loves us and how much, he's waiting to embrace us.
One of the things that I have here that he said was sometimes we can think of love in the soap operas, but that doesn't appear to be love, or else love can seem like having a crush on a person and then it fades away. It seems to me like he was trying to make this very real to people.
That's right, yes, and I think he's aware that it's often something that's very misperceived in society, and he wants to really clarify what is the true love. And he says true love comes from God. It's God's gift to us, and God loves us. And he talks and he gives examples of how much God loves us as well.
Right, and also was able to say that the most important commandments for a Christian are to love God and to love our neighbor. Also, Ed, I know that you wrote a piece talking about the future for the Pope and what visits he's planning on taking in the coming year.
That's right, yes. His visits won't be as much as last year, Lauren, because I think he wants to step back. He said on this trip back from Africa last year that I am old and these trips are heavy. And so he really wants to cut back, I think, a little bit on those trips. There's only one confirmed for this year, and that's to Mexico next month, where it's a 6-city stop tour, so it's quite intense. And he's going to lots of different places on that tour, but that's the only one. He's probably going to World Youth Day in Poland as well, but that's so far the only really confirmed ones we know at the moment.
I like his honesty. I am old, but this Pope certainly has a lot of stamina. I know when he was here in the United States in 3 different cities, he had more than 30 different events that he had. Thank you, Ed. Ed Pentin reporting from Rome.
Thanks, Lauren.
Evangelical leaders are planning a 2-day conference in connection with the March for Life later this month in Washington, D.C. The president of Focus on the Family says the march and conference provide a chance for Catholics and evangelicals to have a united voice for life. A book written by Adolf Hitler is back on store shelves in Germany. Mein Kampf, meaning My Struggle, rolled off the presses for the first time since World War II. After its copyright protection expired last month. The original book was used to help justify the Jewish Holocaust. The new edition includes notes to counteract Hitler's statements. Up next, my one-on-one discussion with Louisiana Representative Garret Graves, what he told me about the push to defund Planned Parenthood. And Revolutionary Relic, why archaeologists are excited about a new discovery in Virginia. Thank you for joining us this evening. I'm Lauren Ashburn. In an exclusive interview with EWTN, Republican presidential candidate Ben Carson says Congress failed when the Supreme Court redefined marriage.
They knew that this ruling was coming up, and they should have known what the consequences would be, and they should have legislation already in place to protect the religious rights of those individuals who felt that marriage is between one man and one woman.
You can watch the entire interview with Dr. Carson on Candidate Conversations 2016 this Sunday at 10 a.m. Eastern, right here on EWTN. With just 3 weeks left in the healthcare enrollment period, a new Gallup survey shows the number of uninsured adults did not significantly change in 2015. This comes as President Obama just vetoed a repeal of Obamacare. Republican Congressman Garret Graves of Louisiana joins us now. Welcome to the program.
Thank you. Great to be here.
You're a lifelong Catholic. You've been in Congress for 1 year, and you jumped right in, voting on some really important bills, including one earlier this week, defunding Obamacare. This is the 60th time Congress has done this. Why isn't this a waste of time?
You know, this time it's different because what we've seen historically is that the Senate has blocked this bill from ever going to the president. And as we've seen with other initiatives where there's been such public opposition to legislation like the Affordable Care Act, we've got to get this to the president's 1 yard line, and we've got to get the public to really push this across.
But he's going to veto it. He's just going to say no, absolutely not. So isn't this just for show? Isn't this just a messaging vote, really?
Look, if we can get in there and make some of the reforms that are needed, it is crystal clear. This remains the top issue that we hear at home, the incredible increase in premiums, the decrease in health care coverage, and the decrease in take-home pay. This is the top issue that we hear back home, and we can't circle around it just because it has the president's name in it.
You're a Catholic. You have 3 children. Part of this was to defund Planned Parenthood, to take the money that the government is giving to Planned Parenthood, make it go to community groups. Why is that important to you?
Look, it wasn't just the videos that came out that showed what the organization was doing. This is something that I feel very personally passionate about. Louisiana is one of the top pro-life states in the nation, and to see some of the just atrocious things that are being carried out by organizations like that to the unborn, it's simply inexcusable.
Thank you very much for joining us, Congressman Garret Graves of Louisiana.
Thank you.
Today marks the final day of excavation for a Virginia archaeology team. It's being called an important and exciting find for history. Catherine Szeltner shares the nautical discovery.
Locals in Old Town Alexandria, Virginia enjoy stumbling upon history at home.
I just wanted to come down and see this amazing discovery that they have.
The city recently applied its Archeological Protection Code at a downtown construction zone. Historic Alexandria had a thriving seaport, so archaeologists weren't surprised to find an 18th century vessel at this construction site.
Finding it was really exciting.
Archaeologists excavated 1/3 of the vessel this week. They believe the ship was purposely buried for landfill, something that would aid maritime success.
This find really goes back to the founding of our city. It was a city that had aspirations for great international trade, and in order to do that, they had to fill this cove and get the land out to where the deep channel of the Potomac was.
This week, archaeologists used 3D lasers to scan the ship. They've also water screened other materials found on site, like this tobacco smoking pipe.
Would have had a much larger stem.
The dismantled ship parts will be sent to a lab and maintained in a wet environment. Researchers hope to learn more about old shipbuilding techniques. And while it'll likely be years until we know results, it's a time these archaeologists say is well spent.
History enriches our lives. When we interpret the history, we get a sense of who we are.
Reporting from Old Town Alexandria, Virginia, Catherine Szeltner, EWTN News Nightly.
Thank you, Catherine. Winning the record-breaking $800 million Powerball jackpot is a dream for many, but it all boils down to math. So, what are the odds? Powerball ticket holders have a 1 in 292.2 million chance of winning. If you want to buy all possible number combinations, the strategy would cost you just a mere $584 million. Experts say your odds are better if you let the computer pick for you. If you choose a favorite figure, like a birth date, then you're ignoring all of the numbers above 31. The next Powerball drawing is Saturday night. One antique collector has money on the mind. A coin collector paid nearly $2 million for this old dime. The 1894 S, it's called, Barber, is one of the rarest in the world. It was auctioned off in Tampa yesterday. Fewer than 10 of these dimes are still known to exist because almost all dimes were melted down in the 19th century financial crisis. The buyer chooses to remain anonymous. For the EWTN News Nightly team, I'm Lauren Ashburn. Good night and God bless.